During the Cold War, the US and NATO had to develop means to penetrate the air defense networks of the Warsaw Pact countries. The U.S. military invested in developing several means to overcome modern defense systems in order to carry out tactical and strategic nuclear attacks on Soviet territory. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union also invested heavily in continuously modernizing its defense system. Their air defense network in the early 1980s deployed a range of systems that few rivals worldwide could match, including the first variants of the highly mobile S-300 air defense system and the long-range S-200 system, which, though less mobile, could engage enemy aircraft up to 300 km away. These systems are supplemented by a range of shorter-range air defense systems such as the Tor M1 anti-cruise missile platform and the Bouquet M1 medium-range defense system. But all of this never stopped the United States from dreaming of one day reaching Soviet territory. The brilliant military minds at the Pentagon devised numerous plans on how to stealthily and secretly enter and exit Soviet airspace without anyone knowing. Indeed, this move was very clever. But Moscow is no amateur. They have developed extremely effective air defense weapons to intercept any threat from the sky, to the point that the land of the white birch is even called the king of air defense. So, what are they? Among the strategies the US employed to penetrate the landmass that then covered 1/6 of the globe was a large fleet of supersonic bombers optimized for very low-altitude operations. Specifically the B-1B Lancer. Low-flying aircraft make them difficult for the enemy to track and neutralize with long-range air defense systems. And this is difficult even for early Soviet interceptor aircraft which lacked low-altitude combat capabilities. This is very different from the strategy of the early Cold War years, when the US sought to deploy the B, which was much more expensive than the B-1B. The B-70 was then likened to a track and field athlete, possessing an extremely high speed of up to Mach 3 and the ability to launch nuclear attacks from very high altitudes. However, this attack method was limited because the Soviet Union developed a defense system specifically designed to destroy targets at high altitudes. And the beast that thwarted the American plan was none other than the S-200 air defense system, as I mentioned above. In addition to easily targeting airborne targets within a range of 300 km, the S-200 radar also has a target detection range of up to 600 km and the ability to search for targets in space at altitudes above 45. Both of these capabilities not only intercept bombers but are also ideal for ballistic missile defense. Furthermore, this system is capable of shooting down fighter jets, even at longer ranges. Furthermore, the Syrian Air Defense Forces S-200s even shot down a US Navy A-4 fighter jet and an Israeli Air Force F-16. Moreover, the Soviet Union's strengthening of its air defense network and the deployment of lightweight, shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles, optimized to destroy low-flying aircraft, diminished the viability of the strategy built around low-flying bombers like the B-1B Lancer. Another possibility was to rely on attack helicopters equipped with advanced electronic warfare countermeasures to neutralize Soviet anti-aircraft batteries and associated radars from low altitudes, although this had serious limitations due to the vulnerability of helicopters when penetrating deep into Warsaw Pact territory. However, this scenario is impossible. No helicopter is capable of flying in and out of that vast area. Therefore, using stealth aircraft would be a wiser option, especially since the United States possesses the F-117 Nighthawk, the world's first stealth aircraft, which first took flight on June 18, 1981. But the strength of the Soviet radar network and the use of many systems, including some that used very high frequencies, also known as VHF frequencies, was undeniable. Simply, this frequency can detect stealth targets, especially when the wavelength is twice the size of the target. The Russian-made Nitel 55G6 VHF radar is proof of this. operating at VHF frequencies. The radar can track targets with low radar cross-sections, such as cruise missiles and stealth aircraft, with high accuracy. This means that stealth technology will no longer provide 100% protection for an aircraft if its adversary uses a radar operating in this frequency range. Military experts mentioned this in a previous video. This is one of the reasons why America's most expensive fighter jet is considered useless. If you're curious about what they look like, click on the link below this video. And would the US stop there after all those plans were thwarted by the Soviet Union? Of course not. Considered Washington's most blunt strategy to neutralize the Soviet Union's air defense system. It involved using aging B-52 bombers armed with tactical nuclear weapons to destroy enemy air defenses through large-scale and disproportionate attacks. The B-52 first took flight in the 1950s, without supersonic or stealth capabilities. It is highly rated for its long range, but it cannot fly exceptionally high or exceptionally low, meaning its only real defensive capability is its electronic warfare systems, even when facing the North Vietnamese Army's air defense systems, which were outdated compared to Soviet air defense systems and relatively low in density. The B-52s suffered significant losses in combat. However, to counter the Soviet air defense system, the B-52 was supported by the AGM-69 SRAM short-range attack missile launcher. This missile entered service in 1972, at a time when the B-52 was increasingly considered obsolete, with over 500 units manufactured within 4 years. Each missile cost over $500,000, making it one of the most expensive missiles of its time, with a range of 150-200 kilometers depending on the flight path and a maximum speed of 300 km/h. The SRAM allowed it to neutralize any Soviet air defense system at the time. After leaving the aircraft, the missile automatically flies to its target with the ability to hit within a circle with a radius of 430 meters, meaning that anything lacking a nuclear warhead would have difficulty hitting a non-strategic target. The US Air Force considered this an acceptable margin of error, because the SRAM W-69 nuclear warhead had a destructive power of up to 200 kilotons, 14 times greater than the atomic bomb the US dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. Just thinking about it is terrifying. Just imagine, with dozens of B-52s deployed, each dropping a considerable number of nuclear warheads. The firepower directed at Soviet air defense positions would be terrifying. It could be a rain shower, or even a firestorm that could blow away an entire modern civilization. But luckily, that didn't happen, because where there's a will, there's a way. The Soviet MiG-31 Foxhound heavy interceptor was the one that drew a red line and became the primary threat to American bombers. Introduced into service in 1981, the MiG-31 was the first fourth-generation fighter aircraft to join the Soviet Air Force and is considered the best air-to-air fighter in the Russian Air Force today. The MiG-31 has an extremely long range and was the first aircraft in the world capable of sustained supersonic flight with a top speed of 3,000 km and a ceiling of 20 meters. It was capable of covering the entire vast North and Central Asian territory of the Soviet Union. It was designed not only to intercept all types of enemy aircraft, from bombers and reconnaissance planes to fighters and airborne early warning jets, but this Soviet masterpiece was also adapted for roles beyond air combat, such as the ability to intercept cruise missiles at low altitudes. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, it was thought that Russia's air defense forces would gradually decline as the country had to brace itself against multiple spearheads. Following the most terrible geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century, at that time, the Russian armed forces were considered a smaller version of the Soviet armed forces. While facing powerful adversaries, it can be said that the armed forces at that time were only suitable for military operations from 1945 onward, and no longer met the requirements of the modern era and modern warfare. But very quickly, Moscow regained the balance and made significant progress in its air defense system. They continue to pose a challenge to American bombers by deploying long-range surface-to-air missile systems, whose reputations are undoubtedly well known. The monsters that the Military Technical Committee wants to refer to here are the S-300, S-400, S-500 missile systems and all their variants. The S-400 Triumph and S-300V4 versions are well optimized to neutralize aircraft such as the B-52 and B-1B Lancer at extremely long ranges. Both systems have a detection range of approximately 600 towers and an operational range of 400 km. Not to mention the S-500 Prometheus, a system developed based on the S-400, which even has a range of over 600 km and an even greater detection range, and is more specialized in neutralizing high-value targets such as strategic bombers. The S-500 takes only 10 seconds to react to an airborne threat and only about 3-4 seconds to engage various targets. The S-400 takes 9-10 seconds to do this. However, with the U.S. military currently fielding a relatively large number of fifth-generation aircraft such as the F-22, Raptor and F-35 Lightning II, a question arises: do the advanced air defense systems that Russia has invested heavily in developing, such as the S-400 and S-5, have a chance of shooting down to F-35s? Kaufman, a Russian military research expert at CNA Corporation, said, "The core of Moscow's air defense strategy is to counter radar stealth weapons. Currently, Russia's complex air defense system includes advanced radar stations, various types of anti-aircraft missiles, and an air force of interceptor fighter jets, integrated into a unified, highly automated system. It forms a multi-layered umbrella to protect its vast airspace." At the Mach's 2017 exhibition, Russia showcased the Struna 1. This is one of the tactical radar systems developed to neutralize American stealth fighters such as the F-22 and F-35. The Struna 1 radar does not integrate the transceiver in the same antenna array. Instead, the transmitting and receiving stations are located in two different locations. This makes the radar more sensitive to signals reflected from the target. The manufacturer claims this design increases the target's radar cross-section by 3 times compared to conventional radar, neutralizing the radar scattering capabilities of stealth materials, and simultaneously protecting against anti-radar missiles. The limitation of this system is its short operating range, only able to track targets at a maximum altitude of 7 km and a range of approximately 12 km. This makes the Struna 1 unsuitable for long-range surveillance, and only suitable for identifying stealth aircraft in vulnerable areas. The best option is to combine the Struna 1 radar with long-wave surveillance radars, which have a large operating range but lower accuracy, to provide target parameters for air defense systems. Despite its many weaknesses that are difficult to overcome, it is still considered a serious threat to US and NATO stealth aircraft in potential conflicts. If combined with Struna 1 radars and modern anti-aircraft missiles, it would become a formidable opponent for the expensive F-22s, F-35s, and B-2s of the US and its allies. With the incredible advancements in Russian radar technology in recent years, US and NATO military experts believe that the risk of fifth-generation stealth aircraft like the F-22 or F-35 losing their stealth advantage and becoming flying targets for Russian air defense systems such as the S-400 or S-500 is entirely possible. Therefore, it is no coincidence that the Soviet Union, and later Russia, were considered the world's leading nation in air defense. Because the threat from the most powerful military, the United States, has never ceased to exist. The potential danger from Washington's lightning-fast global attacks is one of Moscow's top challenges. The U. Global Strike Program has an overall structure similar to a nuclear triad. Its primary aim is to carry out rapid attacks from land and sea, using cruise missiles and intercontinental ballistic missiles fired from submarines. Air-launched hypersonic missiles are the second option the Pentagon is researching and developing. In addition, Washington also developed hypothetical plans for dropping propellant powered bombs from a satellite in orbit. So, in your opinion, what kind of weapons would Russia need to develop to survive an attack from the US if what we just discussed actually happened? Please share your thoughts below to discuss with everyone. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to continue accompanying KTQS on our next journeys. And now, on behalf of the team, Viet Quang would like to say goodbye and see you again.